Go.
Good morning, my name is Pharris, and today I want to talk to you about Major League Baseball's designated hitter rule, the American League versus the National League. So my objectives today, I want to go over the history of the designated hitter rule with you. I want to go over the implementation of the designated hitter rule into the American League. I want to go over the positives of the rule, the negatives of the rule. I want to show you some impact designated hitter players, and I want to give you my opinion on should both leagues use the rule. So the history of the rule. So the designated hitter rule is in Major League Baseball's rules as commonly, 5.11 is commonly known as the designated hitter rule. The DH rule is optional, but must be determined before the start of the game. The designated hitter is a player that bats in the lineup in place of the pitcher. So here is the implementation of the designated hitter rule into the American League. So in 1973, the American League adopted to use the designated hitter rule exclusively. They had to have a vote, so on January 11th, 1973, the American League owners got together and approved a 3-year trial period of the designated hitter rule. The vote was 8-4 in favor of the rule. Subsequently, the National League held a vote on August 13th, 1980 for the same rule. The rule fell short, though, in the approval process, 5-4, due to some of the owners not being able to attend the vote. Still to this day, the American League utilizes the designated hitter, and the National League does not. So now I would like to go over some pros of the designated hitter with you. So first of all, you're going to prevent some injuries of the pitcher, which means the pitcher's not going to be batting and the pitcher's not going to be running. So it's going to be less stress on their body, and they're not going to have the potential of somebody hitting them with the baseball or anything like that, damaging any ligaments or hitting their arm or bones or anything. It's going to increase the team and the league batting average. It has been proven that the American League typically has a higher batting average than the National League due to the fact that they do not have the pitcher bat and the designated hitter does. It does increase the attendance to the games. So most fans want to see high scoring games because they like to see a lot of offense or a lot of hitting going on. And then managers have more strategic options. So before, the designated hitter used to be a full-time position for one player. Now it is a part-time position for multiple players. And what I mean by that is, so if you have a normal everyday player, for instance your outfielder, who needs to take a day off but they're swinging a hot bat, hitting the ball very well, you can give them a partial day off by not having them work in the field, and they could just be your DH. And then pitchers are able to stay in the game longer. So pitchers' bodies are not going to break down having to bat and run. They're going to be able to focus on their craft and actually pitch. Some cons or negatives of the designated hitter rule: it takes away some strategy. So the history of baseball is the pitcher always bats. Well, some strategy to that is a lot of the small ball. Small ball is where you're doing a lot of bunts, a lot of ground balls and that kind of stuff, as to where the long ball is actually where you're hitting home runs and balls deep into the outfield. Games take longer with better offense. So when you do have a DH, since their batting average is higher than what a pitcher's batting average is, typically the games are going to take a little bit longer. There's no more excitement of the pitchers hitting. So for the most part, you do have a couple pitchers that can hit very well, and you do lose the excitement of that. But for the most part, your pitchers do not hit as that great of a hitter. Taken away from the history of the game. Kind of like the strategy, the history of the game is prior to 1973, your pitchers always batted no matter what league you were in. So here are some impact designated hitters that I just want to go over a few minutes with you guys. So on the top over here, we have Ron Blomberg. Ron Blomberg was the first ever designated hitter in a Major League Baseball game. In 1973, on April 6th, he played for the New York Yankees, and they were playing the Boston Red Sox. At his first plate appearance, the bases were loaded, and he was walked due to the fact that he was swinging a hot bat. Right here in the middle, we have Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson is well known in San Francisco, Oakland, Bay Area because he played for the Oakland Athletics, and he did a tremendous job helping them get through some tough times. Over here on the right, we have David Ortiz. David Ortiz used to be a great first baseman. When his body started to break down, but he was still swinging a hot bat. They moved him into the DH role. For there, he has helped the Red Sox win multiple national championships, multiple World Series, not national championships, but he has been an impact player for this team. Over here we have Prince Fielder. Prince Fielder played for the Detroit Tigers and the Texas Rangers until this previous year where he injured his neck and is no longer able to play baseball. Here in the middle we have Juan Gonzalez. Juan Gonzalez was a Texas Ranger. He typically played in the outfield, but occasionally he would DH. On the far right we have Jim Thome. Jim Thome has played for multiple teams and has won multiple World Series with those teams in the role of the DH. Down here on the bottom we have Edgar Martinez, Frank Martinez, and Alex Rodriguez. Two of these, Edgar Martinez and Frank Thomas, are both Hall of Famers in the DH role. Their batting averages are very high and they've helped their teams win multiple World Series. Should both leagues use the same rule? In my opinion, yes. Both leagues should use the same rule, and that rule is using the designated hitter. Both leagues should use the designated hitter rule because of these instances here. So first, your pitcher's contracts. So as of right now, there's over 800 hours in pitcher contracts worth $1.1 billion. So my question is, why would you want to put your pitcher in even more risk for injury and that when you're spending that amount of money? Brings me to my next point, decrease pitchers' injuries. So by having a designated hitter, you're not having your pitcher go up there and bat and run and all that and expose their bodies to even more injury. Most pitchers are not good hitters. So like I said before, you have a couple anomalies where the pitchers can hit really well, but typically they don't. And the reason why they typically don't hit very well is because once they finish high school and go into college, all the way through AA in baseball, every team utilizes the designated hitter rule. So the pitchers can focus on their craft of pitching and not having to worry about hitting. Pitchers can stay in the game longer. So when you're using a DH, your pitchers are able to stay in the game longer because they're not having to bat, you're not having to use that strategy of pulling them out. Again, strategy. So therefore, again, that kind of ties in that pitchers can stay in the game longer, plus also you're able to utilize multiple players in the designated hitter role if you need to give players days off to where you can rotate them around and you're not utilizing the same one. You're going to create 15 new positions of the designated hitter in the National League because right now they currently do not have the designated hitter rule. You're going to increase your offense. So as I said before, the American League typically has a higher batting average year after year than what the National League does. You'll increase the attendance of the games. So it has been a fact that the more offense that you have, the fans are more willing to show up to the games and spend their money. Unification of the MLB. So with the designated hitter rule, you're going to unify the whole league. And the biggest part of that is during the World Series when everything counts, you're not bouncing back and forth from having your pitchers bat to having a designated hitter. So when you go to a National League part in the World Series, you have to have your pitchers bat. When you go to the American League, you're able to utilize a designated hitter. Well, the unification of this would mean that you were typically always going to use a designated hitter and you're going to save your pitchers. So in summary, we went over the history of the designated hitter, the DH rule. We went over the implementation of the designated hitter into the American League. We went over the positives of the rule, the negatives of the rule, some impact designated hitters, and then, in my opinion, should both leagues use the rule, which is yes, they should. And here are some of the websites that I went to get my information. And I do appreciate you taking the time to watch this. And if you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. Thank you.